What is going on, soccer fans, football fans alike? Welcome into Edging a Win, and we are going to have a great weekend of soccer betting, soccer football. It is now officially July 1st, and we are full steam ahead here with the MLS and the Gold Cup, which is underway. I know we got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to talk about the MLS regular season picks, match day 22 coming up. We're also going to dive into the Gold Cup, and we will talk more about what we think is going to happen at the end of the Gold Cup. But the man who is on time, boom, just like that, as I'm getting into the introduction, we have to introduce the man to my left or to the right, depending on how you watch your computer. The face of the program, a soccer enthusiast from a place where they call it football, an expert in everything Miami FC, and on loan from us from his own YouTube channel, Mr. Ian OUFC. Ian Allen, how are you doing, sir, today?
I'm very good, Matt. I better talk quick because you never know when I might dip out of this stream. So I better talk fast. But yeah, it's great to be here once again. Hopefully we're going to try and get you some winners and hopefully another great weekend in the MLS and the continuation of CONCACAF. So plenty to talk about, and I think we should crack on.
Yeah, let's dive right into it. Fun show lined up for everybody. So without further ado, I want to dive into our best three bets in the MLS, and then we'll talk some CONCACAF. And I do have a bet there. But Ian, I just mentioned you're expert in Inter Miami right now at the moment. They play Austin FC. There's a ton going on. We'll get into it in just a minute. But what are you looking at here in the MLS with the Miami-Austin game?
Yeah, so thanks for introducing that one. We're looking for over 2.5 goals in this game. This game is like 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, so over 2.5 goals in the game between Miami and Austin FC. You're quite right in what you said. Inter Miami are making all the headlines here at the moment. We know why, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but let's talk about them on the field because, quite frankly, they have been pathetic. 7 defeats in a row, and they've shown no real improvement since the firing of Phil Neville a few weeks ago. But they have decided on a new manager finally. It is going to be Tata Martino, who will come in shortly as the new boss. Austin FC are coming off the back of 2 good home wins, and they will be expecting to make this 3 wins in a row against the side that sits bottom of the Eastern Conference. But I do think this one could be a closer game than what people think. The Herons are a better side at home, and Austin do seem to struggle when they are on the road. But the reason I'm going for goals is quite frankly because Inter Miami's defense has been pretty bad all season, particularly from dealing with crosses and dealing from set pieces. Austin's side isn't great at defense either, and they struggle when teams press them, and particularly on the counter-attack as well. If you look at the stats, Austin have gone over 2.5 goals in each of the last 6 games, and Inter Miami have gone over 2.5 goals in 8 of the last 10. I think personally this game could be a high-scoring draw, maybe 2-2, maybe even 3-3. So I do think over 2.5 goals is a good shout, and that is my bet 1 for this weekend.
Yeah, I love that bet. I texted you Thursday night before you even gave this out to me, and I was like, hey, I think Miami over 2.5 in Austin is a good bet. If people remember from last week, I was on Austin over that match as well against, I think it was Dallas or Houston or somebody. They won 3-0. Houston's putting up good numbers. We'll get into maybe Houston later, but I do want to take a moment and talk about this Miami team. And I guess we're going to have to start talking about Messi, who should, and I've heard he's going to make his debut on July 21st, just a week after the St. Louis game. Do you think that Messi's going to come in and instantaneously change the fortunes of Inter Miami? And I do want to preface that he is going to start with a Leagues Cup game, not an MLS game.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that too. And it's crazy what the Messi hype is doing around Inter Miami, despite the fact of them being terrible on the field, off the field. They're talking about maybe moving games to different stadiums because of all the people that want to come and watch Messi play. They're talking about tickets selling for $1,000 a pop, which is absolutely crazy for a side that's sitting bottom. But it is also an exciting time for Inter Miami as well. It's not just Messi that's coming in. You've got Barcelona legend and great of the game, Sergio Busquets, coming in there too, those two will make a massive difference to this Inter Miami side. Tata Martino as well has worked with Messi at international level, so those two are familiar with each other. And all these things do point to an Inter Miami side that should make big improvements. Will it be too late for this season? I think it probably will be. That they're already way behind in the race. I know it's like a lot of sides. Is it 8 or 9 sides get into the playoffs?
No, it's 9. There's a play-in game, so 8 and 9 essentially will play in. But yeah, technically 9.
But they are so far behind, even 9th place. It's going to take a heck of an effort for them to improve. So I would say probably not. But I would say it's more of a case of them building the hype towards next season. And remember, Messi's basically had no rest coming in off a World Cup, full European season. It's the same for Busquets as well. So they will need some break coming into the next season as well. I think you should see a much stronger Inter Miami side. But I think this season, for the rest of it, it'll all just be about hyping it up and trying to make as much money in the short term as they can.
Yeah, and just the number from where they're at to 9th place is actually 11 points at the moment, which you have to think, even the New England Revolution, who's I think 2nd in the East, they're 11 points almost behind Cincinnati, and nobody thinks that they're going to catch them. So having a bad team like Miami catch a playoff team essentially kind of out of reach there. Just follow-up question I did want to ask you, with the Barca manager coming in, I assume we all think that's Messi pulling strings there to get a guy that he's played with before or played for with, but I guess my question is, and maybe you've seen this in the English leagues, if a guy does that, a big name does that, brings somebody in, do you think other players on the team are happy about that? Or do you think it kind of pisses people off that all of a sudden this big name's coming to town, and now they have to kind of just do whatever Messi wants for the team?
I would say there could be. I would say in this instance probably not. I would say that Tata Martino in himself has a lot of experience and a lot of quality in the game as being a good coach, and so I think those Inter Miami players will be excited of the fact of working with him, and I think they'll also be excited of the fact of one of the best players ever to play the game. There's not really been many instances where, I know for Paris Saint-Germain there's been times where he's looked a little bit disinterested, but Messi's never been this disruptive figure in a dressing room where he's been the one that's held the team to ransom or made stupid demands that the teams had to do to. Usually you build a team around him because he's the best player. He's not a divisive figure like, say, a Cristiano Ronaldo or anything like that. So I would just say it's generally just going to be excitement from those players in this instance.
Well, that's good, and hopefully that will then shed results on the field for them. So I like it. Yeah. Miami over 2.5 against or with Austin there. I was on that bet. I think that's going to be an easy winner to start things off for this weekend. I have a bet that's also looking at the over today. I'm looking at Dallas and LAFC over 2.5. Listen, both of these teams at the moment, they have struggled over their last 5 matches. They're going to want to come into this one and come away with 3 points. At least somebody's going to, in my opinion. FC Dallas has now lost 4 of their last 5 matches, and really it's 4 of their last 4 full matches, as the one match that they did win was that continuation of a match with that suspended earlier game from the year with the Lightning and the Thunder, the St. Louis SC game. Listen, Dallas, they have also not scored in 3 weeks, okay? And I know that doesn't, it's not good to bet on somebody who hasn't scored with the over, but over their last 4 matches, they are conceding 2 goals per match. So LAFC, on the other hand, you think about them being one of the best teams in the MLS, or at least expectations are that way. They've taken a step back recently. They have lost 3 of their last 5 matches. 2 of those were to the Houston Dynamo, and they lost 1 to Vancouver, the Whitecaps. Honestly, LAFC, in my opinion, they play down to their opponents. It just seems like they need a big match on their schedule for them to actually care to show up and take care of business, kind of like they did with the Seattle Sounders a couple weeks ago, winning that 1-0. Now, I am going to stay away from the money line on this match. I'd love to bet LAFC, but I'm just not sure what you get from either team here. So, as I mentioned, best bet in this one, in my opinion, over 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, it looks a pretty good bet to me. I mean, this Western Conference, though, is so unpredictable. It's so hard to back sides on the money line. Although I'm going to do that in a little bit. But yeah, it's so bunched up between the top sides. It's only 7 points difference between first and ninth. Last weekend, we were talking about how St. Louis are going to slide down the table, and now they had a good win and they jumped back up to the top. So it is very, very tough to pick. Who do you think, though, at this stage, Matt, are the teams to trust to finish high up and finish in the playoffs in this Western Conference?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so bunched up, but I hate to say out of the top 3 teams right now, which is St. Louis City, LAFC, and the Sounders, I still have to put LAFC as the front runner to win the West. They just have too much talent all over the field. And honestly, they've played the least amount of games. So they actually have, I think, 1 game up on St. Louis and maybe 2 on Seattle. Speaking of Seattle, they're struggling. They've only picked up 3 points in their last 5 matches. But they're dealing with some players. I'm going to give them a little bit of a pass. They're dealing with some players on some international breaks here as CONCACAF with the Nations League and now the Gold Cup have taken some players away like Jordan Morris, the Rodons. El Salvador had a Rodon, I think, that one of them just played last night. We'll get into that later. But I think until those guys come back, they're not going to get into their winning ways. And I hate to say, as much as we're St. Louis City fans with all the injuries, I think that team's going to fall between like 3rd and 6th place as the season goes on. I think, though, the 2 teams that if you want to watch out for that are a little bit farther down the standings are a sneaky good Real Salt Lake team, even though, Ian, I know they screwed us last week, which you're pretty pissed about, and Austin, which you just talked about. Listen, I said last week, take Austin at plus 5,000, little pizza money there to win the Cup. Now, after the win last week, 3-0, they are plus 3,500. So if they actually beat Miami today, they could be in the top 4 at the end day of match 22. So I think there's a team that might be farther behind those bottom 3 that, might give us a good run here as we conclude the season.
I agree. I mean, again, that's what makes it exciting, though, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing. We talked about the kind of how when we did the end of the European season, how a lot of those leagues are just done and dusted with weeks to go. I mean, this one looks like it's going to be all over, changes every single week and excitement every single week until the very last weekend of the regular season.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have a little bit of a break coming up with the Leagues Cup, which we'll get into in the next few weeks and talk about that. But I know you have one more MLS best bet, and I believe we're staying in the Western Conference with a couple teams that one's good and one's not so great. So what do you got coming up?
Yeah, in the Western Conference is quite right. So I'm going to go against everything you just said by not backing a side on the money line. And I'm going to back San Jose Earthquake on the money line. There's San Jose Earthquake versus LA Galaxy. It's 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be way too late for me. It's like 3:30 a.m. UK time. But I think San Jose are going to win this one. Look, the Earthquake, they're around even money to do so. And they're up against the draw kings that are the LA Galaxy. San Jose are coming off the back of 2 losses. That's probably why their price is pretty good in this one. But the last of which was a defeat to our boys, St. Louis City SC, FC, whatever they are. But that was a weird game. And if you look back at the highlights of that game or the stats on that game, San Jose will be scratching their head. They're thinking how they absolutely lost it. And we will be talking about that one in a little bit. But they have the chance to put that right against an LA Galaxy side. In fact, that defeat to St. Louis last weekend was the first defeat they've had at home all season. The Galaxy, the second bottom, and they've only won 3 games all season as well. They've proved they're no pushovers of late, and they've got 3 draws, 3 pretty decent draws as well. So they can be a tough side. And I don't expect this one to be a particularly high-scoring game. And I think it's going to come down to set pieces. San Jose are very strong from scoring from set pieces. They've scored 6 goals from set pieces. LA Galaxy, that's one of their particular weaknesses, conceded 7 goals from set pieces. That's one of the best and the worst in the whole of the MLS. Can't speak. It will be a tight game, but I think San Jose will come through and win this one on the money line. And that is my bet 3, or our bet 3, for this weekend.
Yeah, real quick about the LA Galaxy. If anybody remembers, when this league, the MLS, quite honestly started, the LA Galaxy was like the biggest name. They were like the poster child of the MLS, but they have not won the MLS or really even given a scare to do so since 2014. And about a month ago, they actually fired longtime president Chris Klein. Fans were happy with this, but we haven't really seen any improvement on the field. Ian, are we going to see the LA Galaxy return to their past glories anytime soon?
Oh, I don't know about any time soon, but they needed to make that change. I mean, it's just a club that's been, what's the word, just flatlining and going backwards for a number of years. I mean, you talked about it since 2014 was the last time they won the MLS Championship. They haven't even come close since then. And they barely make in most seasons, they barely make the playoffs, and they're second best by a distance to the other side in LAFC. And so they needed to make some change. Very, very upset fan base. And this firing of Chris Klein could not have come soon enough for them. It completely needs to be a root and branch change at this football club. They've probably got a lot of dead wood in that squad that needs to be gotten rid of. So I can't imagine it's going to be a change that change is good and it needed to be done. I don't think it's going to mean that the LA Galaxy are going to be challenging this year or maybe even challenging next year. But they needed to make that. They needed to just get rid of the rot, if you like, and start to improve things. It'd be interesting to see who they do bring in. And what sort of players they can attract, if any, in this transfer window on the next one. But at least in the short term, that is something that is going to get the fan base on side. And maybe you might see the fans returning to the stadium, because it's been I think it's been like a huge drop off in attendances as well, which doesn't help. So, yeah, it's in the short term, it's not great for the Galaxy, but at least now the fans have got a little bit of positivity about the future.
Yeah, I feel bad for them over the last decade, but I mean, still, they were the poster child for like 15, 20 years, so it's kind of like, whatever. I mean, they're not
they still are. I mean, talking about it from a country where obviously outside of the US, LA Galaxy is still probably one of the biggest names in the sport because of the likes of David Beckham going over there. There's merchandise for LA Galaxy probably still sells pretty well outside of the in other countries outside of the US because of the history of the club. So for them to be struggling so much is a bit of a surprise. I mean, it's a little bit like I remember back in the day, Oakland Raiders always used to be like the big team. You used to see that merchandise everywhere, even though they weren't a particularly good team. You used to see that was the one club where they used to sell all their merchandise in the UK.
Well, they were so bad of a team, they moved to LA. Or Las Vegas, not LA.
Yeah.
But, all right, enough about...
going back further than that. This is like going back like the 90s or early 2000s.
Enough about bad teams, though. Let's talk about a good team. Let's talk about the team that we follow, and that is St. Louis City.
Oxford United.
Not even close. St. Louis City SC. Listen, big win last week for our depleted St. Louis team. Goalkeeper of the year, maybe, with Berkey? Maybe even, honestly, and I'm being completely honest, maybe even MVP worthy so far this season. When you watch St. Louis City, they actually, I don't think, would have gotten many wins on the season, in all honesty, with St. Louis City, as Ian's dipped out. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. But St. Louis City without Berkey is absolutely awful. They can't do anything. They have so many injuries right now. They have Klaus out, Leuven's out. Don't worry, Ian. I didn't even allow you to have speaking time there. But Ian, I'm just talking about St. Louis City. And I mean, what are your thoughts on this team? It's a huge match and a huge win last week. So are they going to be able to withstand Klaus being out, Leuven being out? I mean, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I jumped out there because I thought we were going to talk about Oxford, and then the fact we weren't, I decided to get annoyed. But Yeah, a massive win, a huge win last weekend, and it changes the whole mood in the St. Louis camp.
Yeah.
Again, all we've been talking about is the players that are out and how this side is struggling and how they continually go behind in a game and have to fight from behind and aren't very good at doing it. But last weekend, full credit to the manager, came in and changed things around, brought in some new players that we hadn't seen before, like a Denerin, and they looked like a different side. It looked like a different spirit about this St. Louis team. They got the early goal. They had and the Denerin became this focal point of the side, a guy with pretty good pace and power, proved he can score goals, and they came away with a fantastic win. They rode their luck a little bit at the end, and Berkey made some tremendous saves, but all of a sudden you're looking at it now and thinking that they might be able to ride this out until Klaus and Lovren come back. If they're going to continue playing with a Denerin up front with Alm, that seemed to work really nicely. And you just have to think, where's this guy been? Why have they not tried him before? It's ridiculous that this guy's been out of the side, and that's his first game of the season, because it's the one thing they've really been lacking is a guy with a focal point of the side.
No, I agree. They keep putting Jackson in also, and I'm not a big fan of this Jackson kid. He's a youngster. He hasn't done much. He's brought a little bit of energy, and to be fair to him, they only put him in usually with about 15 minutes left if he doesn't get a start. He has had a couple starts, but I agree with you. This kid needs to be inserted in the lineup more, and if you don't want to put him in the full lineup when Klaus and Leuven come back, just make sure that he is one of your subs that is used on a regular basis. So I think tonight, quite honestly, this match is going to get us a good indication of, are we an actual elite team? Because if we elite teams, and I think we can both agree on this, and we talked about this a little off air, elite teams beat teams they should. Like the USA men's team beat St. Kitts. They should beat them, and they should beat them handily. And St. Louis at home tonight, no excuses. If you remember the last time we played Colorado, it was in Colorado, and I think Colorado nicked a goal late to make it a 1-1 game, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a late goal, and we ended up drawing. So if you're going to have that 1-0 lead at home, you're going to have to finish out the game strong. So
yeah, but I will just say, credit to Bradley Carnell. This side has been able to bounce back from dips in form, and they've done that again last weekend. So hopefully they do carry it on. And also, I'm sure you did talk about Roman Berkey in goal while I was off there for a second.
Yeah.
But, we haven't really talked about him, but what a coup of a signing that was for St. Louis. This isn't just some guy who was at the end of his career coming to the MLS. This is a guy who was Swiss international goalkeeper, played over 150 games for Borussia Dortmund. This is a top-class goalkeeper. Sure. And it just shows you when you have a top-class goalkeeper, they win you points. And that is exactly what happened last weekend.
Yeah, and I did talk while you bounced out for a second about how good he is, and I honestly think he should be, honestly, considered for MVP if he continues and St. Louis continues in good form as the season continues. But before we get to the Gold Cup, and I do want to touch on the Gold Cup, I do want to talk about two, I think, decent games and one match of the week, and let's start with that. FC Cincinnati playing against New England Revolution, 1-2 in the East. New England is what? I think they're just a few points, like 9 maybe, something behind. Let's see. They're officially seven points. So if they could steal 3 today, they'd end up 4 back. Any chance you think they steal, or you like Cincinnati? I know you were on them last week, and they disappointed you.
Yeah, and they were really poor last week. The way they lost the game to DC United, 3 pretty basic goals, just long balls forward that they struggled to deal with, or balls into the box that they struggled to deal with, and DC got goals off second plays. And so that's given the New England Revolution a path to victory, really, of showing you how you can hurt this Cincinnati side. Cincinnati still looked pretty good going forward. There was a lot of times they got good into good areas but didn't take their chances in that game. But New England Revolution will be thinking, if they can get a win in this one, then all of a sudden that gap goes back to 4 points, and that all of a sudden doesn't look such a strong position for Cincinnati, who a week ago they looked like they were going to be first place and no one else was going to get close.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from Cincinnati. Before that loss, they had won 3 of their last 4, and they had gotten 10 points in their last 4 matches. However, it's just at the moment, New England is looking stronger. They've won their last 3. They haven't lost in their last 2. No, I know it's at least the last 5. So they just look like a strong side, and I'm looking forward to this one tonight. That's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But if we transition over to the Western Conference, I think still, maybe not match of the week, but the Seattle Sounders against a Houston Dynamo team that won twice already against LAFC, including one on the road. Can the Houston Dynamo go into Seattle and do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, again, both these sides, just with how unpredictable the Western Conference is, I mean, both these sides will be thinking if they get a win this one, they could move up within striking distance of first place. Seattle could even, well, they need a big win to go top, but, Seattle will be thinking they could go joint top and win here if results go their way. So this is a very, very even game. Seattle are not in good form, though, Matt. Barely won 1 out of the last 6. A lot of draws in there. Houston Dynamo lost last weekend, but they had won 3 before that. So you would say that they'll be probably the more confident going into this one, but Seattle do still remain a pretty good side, and maybe they're just going through, they're getting their little blip out of the way before they kick on and come strong again.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, Seattle without some players. In fact, I know they're without Morris. I know they're without Rodon, or both of the Rodons, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see how they come out. It is in Seattle. I've been in that stadium before. It's very hard to play there. But if Houston does win this match, and I think then you got to take them seriously as a contender to win the Western Conference. I mean, that would put them at 30 points. And who knows what St. Louis City and LAFC do tonight. So those are 2 matches I'm definitely looking forward to tonight. But before we get off air, there's a massive tournament that I think we both want to talk about for a minute. And that is the Gold Cup, the CONCACAF Gold Cup. I do actually have a bet in this one. It's our 4th bet here of the weekend. And let me talk about that first, and then we'll dive into the group stage and how it's being played out. But I'm looking at the USA and Trinidad game, which is being played tomorrow in Group A, and I am going to take the over 3.5 goals in this game. Listen, USA tied Jamaica in their opening match of the Gold Cup, and then they put a 6-0 beatdown on St. Kitts. And as I mentioned, that surprised nobody, and they did their job. The ironic thing is, though, if they were actually to lose to Trinidad and Tobago tomorrow, they would essentially be out of the Gold Cup. Now, that is far from happening. I know you have your own thoughts here, Ian, in a second with that. However, the USA does tend to play down in these situations to their opponent, especially in recent history. And if you remember, we saw this Trinidad team exit them from World Cup qualification in the last decade. And I honestly think this has to be on their minds. I don't think the USA keeps a clean sheet against a pesky Trinidad team, but I do think they are fueled up to go out and score at will and make this one or create a chance where it's out of reach early in the second half for Trinidad. I see the Dallas FC striker Ferreira adding to his Gold Cup total after he just had a hat trick in the last one against St. Kitts. And after maybe what could be a nervy 1-1 first half and going into halftime, I like goals to flow in the second half and the USA to nick this one out at like 3-1. So I know the spread's set at 2.5, and I honestly don't want to mess with that because if the United States went up 3-0, we've seen a lot of late goals here. So I'm just going to take the over 3.5. And Ian, from an outside perspective, do you think the Americans look good at the moment? And is this going to be an easier win than I'm thinking?
You stole my thunder a little bit there because I was going to talk about how you're obviously a biased rooting son of Uncle Sam over there, Matt, and how you're never gonna say a bad word against your beloved.
I have
American.
very biased opinions.
Oh, hey, that's a blast from the past. But I was going to say about Trinidad and the old 2018 World Cup and bloody, but that is a long time ago now. That's ancient history.
Yeah.
How I look at this US squad, I mean, for me, Obviously, a squad that's not as strong as the one we saw in the CONCACAF Nations League. I don't think they were ever going to do that. And so kind of looking at it, it's a B/C team with a lot of younger players coming in, a next generation of talent. And you kind of saw that, you kind of saw that in the 1-1 draw against Jamaica. But I also think BJ Callahan didn't really play a great side in that. He kind of got, he kind of got a bit torn between what he wanted to do. He played a lot of experienced side. He kind of like didn't almost like wanted USA sort of played within themselves a little bit and then found themselves a 1-0 down, but they did manage to scramble out with a 1-1 draw. And I think that kind of was the slap in the face they kind of needed. I think he kind of went in with a younger side against a fresher side against St. Kitts, and they did a thoroughly professional job on a side that they would expect to beat, but they scored some good goals. They won 6-0, and they can take a lot of confidence going into this Trinidad game. I hope that there is more of a mindset about trying to play a younger, fresher side and letting them play on the front foot and letting them go out and attack rather than trying to play a more passive game and a more controlled game, because I feel that that's not really going to playing to the USA strength. So I feel that this is a USA side that have got that difficult game out of the way first, and now if they can top the group, should just be on a nice little steady upward curve until, well, hopefully on your case, they get to the final.
Listen, I was just thinking of something. We didn't even talk about this off air, but in all honesty, why do you think with a national team like USA, they don't put their best squad out there? Like, I understand they're trying to, get some of these youngsters some playing time and put them in pressure situations and grow as a United States men's national team. But, why would you not want to go out, put your best team, and just automatically try to win the tournament? Because I don't think they have their best squad.
Yeah, well, they haven't got the best squad. I mean, most of the key players that play in the United States side are obviously guys who play in the European leagues, and pretty much all of those guys aren't there. I'm thinking Matt Turner's there, isn't he? But he's a goalkeeper, so it's slightly different. And I think that it's about a lot of these guys have come off European seasons, long European seasons. They've come off a World Cup as well. You've got to give these guys a break before they go back into another 9-month European soccer season. So I think it was a case of maybe, okay, you guys are going to play the Nations League and you guys are going to play in the Gold Cup. And I think it's very difficult scheduling for all the CONCACAF nations that they've had 2 tournaments back to back. And you just can't keep the players there. Those players are going to be the sides. The club sides are going to get annoyed with their players being on international duty when they should be on a break. That means that they'll have to come back to their pre-season late, and you just create a bad overall relationship with the club sides. This isn't as much as you want to win every game. This isn't a massive tournament in terms for the United States, so it is a good opportunity to bring in some younger talent. It does put you in a position where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because I think people can see the logic in trying out new players, but then if you don't win, you get criticised for it. But I don't really think that they've got much choice in this instance.
I agree with you, but I'm just a person. Let's go out to try to win. But let's talk about the group stage.
At the end of the day, you as a fan, you want to see your side win, right? So if regardless of who pulls on the jersey for the United States men's national side, if they go out and they lose, you're going to be pissed off if they lose, and you're going to start pointing fingers and asking questions. It is a tricky situation.
Last note on that, and this is just what I'll say. If they lose to Trinidad on Sunday and they're knocked out of this Gold Cup, the 2020 vision would be why didn't you put your best team out there? And if I'm the coach of the U.S. men's national team, I'm sitting there I risked my job by not pushing harder to get a better squad.
Yeah. Then that might be the case in normal years, but the way they're doing it with the US men's national team is you've got BJ Callahan there who's going to step away, and they're going to bring Greg Berhalter in. So in a way, yeah, he'll get criticism, but it will be Greg Berhalter can come in and just go, well, wasn't me, and start again.
Also, if you're the vice president of operations of US men's national team, though, you should recognize that and not put BJ Callahan in as the coach, because it's going to be an embarrassment if they don't win, if they don't get past the group stage.
BJ Callahan played. At least the USA went out and played with some freaking intent. Like what was the main thing we got pissed off about the World Cup is USA, played well, but then tried to just play a stupid little possession-based European game. At least BJ Hallitan let the players off the leash and went out and played with a purpose.
I'm going to argue till the sun comes up, and but I do want to touch on the Gold Cup itself. I'm sure we'll talk about the U.S. men's national team disappointments next week. But let's play a little game. Let's play a little game before we sign off here. Let's do a little, I guess, very biased opinions is another touch to the past for you. But let's talk about biggest disappointment in the Gold Cup so far. I'll start with this one. Mine's Qatar. And I quite honestly think they should have 4 points right now in both their matches. They conceded late. They should have at least had a draw and at least had a win. And because of those late goals, they are going to be most likely knocked out of the group stage because I do not see them beating a Mexico side that's just on a tear right now. Ian, what would your biggest disappointment be of the tournament?
Yeah, I mean we haven't seen the second round of games in Group D yet, so I'm going to hold off my judgment. But Canada weren't great, but Costa Rica are going to be mine. 2 games, 1 point, defeat to Panama. Played really poorly against Panama as well. Couldn't beat an El Salvador side either, which leaves their qualification hanging by a thread. They might be able to squeak through still, but I don't think this is a side that's going to go much further than quarterfinals if they do get through.
Yeah, good news with them, though, is they are playing the team that they have to jump over, which is Martinique. And if you are looking at goal differential, Martinique is on level at 0, and Costa Rica is just -1. So a 2-0 win, actually, over Martinique would get them through, I think. So at least they're playing a team that I think is maybe overachieved thus far in the Gold Cup. But let's talk about the team to beat right now. Go ahead. Start with your team to beat right now in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, well, I'll just go with Jamaica. I mean, I thought that they've obviously set their sights on this tournament being one that they want to potentially win, and they brought in a lot of good players from the English Premier League. I mean, the likes of Mikel Antonio. I mean, he's been playing for Jamaica for a while, but Damari Gray is in there too, and I just think they've got a lot of power going forward. They're going to create a lot of chances in games and be a difficult side for any team to beat. Look really good in the game against Trinidad. Be interesting to see how many they can rack up against St. Kitts, but I think they've been pretty strong so far.
I'm going to go with Mexico. I honestly think Mexico is the team to beat. I picked them as my tournament winners. They opened up their first game with a goal in the 50th second. And since then, they have not looked back. My only concern was they gave up, I think, a 78th minute goal to Jean-Jacques of Haiti. And, it was kind of unnecessary there as they had a 2-goal lead. But with that said, although it was a 0-0 draw going into halftime against Haiti, I do like that they came out and they're like, let's take care of business, and they scored in the 46th and 56th minutes. So I do think Mexico is the team to beat. I know they might be on a collision course to meet either USA or Jamaica maybe in the finals. And I hope that is actually something that we get to see, and I hope that's how it comes to fruition. However, there are some teams that I think could make some noise that are not in a great position right now, but there could be a couple teams. Anybody that might make some noise as we go later here?
Yeah, well, I'll just do one little caveat of a seed. I just want to give a little shout out to Guadeloupe for their 2-2 draw with Canada. I'm still not sure they're going to get through, but Thierry Ambrose, wonderful game for Guadeloupe. Scored an amazing first goal. Go and check that out if you haven't seen it. But I'm just going to go with Panama. Could be an awkward side to play. Qualified now, 2 wins from 2-2-1 victories. Not particularly an amazing team, but pretty well organized, very physical, make it a difficult game. If you are in a knockout game and you go a goal down to Panama, they could be a very, very difficult side to break open because they are just very well organized. So that they could be a difficult side to play in a knockout game.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I'm disappointed. Panama pre-tournament was at a better price to win, and I'm a little disappointed I didn't kind of throw some pizza money on them because they have, after these first 2 games, they've gone down quite a bit. I'm looking at the Haitians. They're sitting in the 2nd spot right now behind Mexico. Listen, they've already played Qatar and Mexico, what I think are the top 2 teams in that group. They are now going to be taking on Honduras, and I think they take care of business there, and they will end up being the 2 out of Group B, which means they will take on Panama from Group C. So I know you're on Panama, but I do think that will be a good game, Panama against the Haitians. Haitians have shown me that they can put the ball in the net. They put one, as I just mentioned, against Mexico, and they did nick one late to get a win over Qatar. So I think that might be an interesting team to look forward to, but I do agree with your sentiment about Guadeloupe. What a game against the Canadians, and we'll see Group D a little bit later today.
We certainly will.
So that is it for us. That is our 4 bets, 3 from the MLS, and again, I like the over 3.5 goals from the USA. We will be back for, I think, 2 more weeks, and then we are transitioning over to Edging a Win, new YouTube channel. So make sure you go subscribe. It's already up, working on the artwork for it. But we will be back next week with more of the Gold Cup and MLS Match Day 23 predictions. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you soon.